President.
Miss Sally, good to see you. Thank you. Okay.
So, Mr. President, women, as you have pointed out in your book, do not fare very well in most religions around the world. And at best, they are second-class citizens. At worst, they have been imprisoned, enslaved, tortured, raped, beaten, murdered. And I've had a lot of women say to me over the past years that I've done On Faith, how could God let this happen? Does God hate women? Well, how would you answer that question?
Well, the abuse of women that you used to refer was in the past tense. It's still going on around the world and in the United States as well. And I would say that God does not hate women. I happen to be a Christian, and it would be a fruitless search to look through the scriptures and find one single instance where Jesus did not treat women either equal or superior to men. And unfortunately, though they're in the entire concept of the Bible, the 36,000 or so verses, if you are a male and you want to consider yourself superior in the eyes of God, then you can find a verse here and there that might confirm your beliefs. But when I have a problem of that kind, I teach the Bible every Sunday, as a matter of fact, in my local church, about half the time from the Hebrew text, the Old Testament, half from the New Testament. But when I get in a quandary about some comparisons that seem to be difficult, I turn to the words and actions of Jesus Christ. And he believes with almost everybody here, I'm sure, that women are exactly equal or even sometimes maybe superior to men.
But Jesus had 12 disciples. They were all men, and there were no women at the Last Supper. How would you explain that?
Well, but you have to remember that Jesus also referred to women in a way that nobody had ever done before. He associated not only with women in public, which had never been done before, but he also went into Samaria, which the Jews despised, and he recognized a woman who was living with her fifth man, and in just a few minutes, he convinced her that he was the Son of God, and she was the first witness, really, to go and tell her people, I have witnessed the long-awaited Messiah. And we know that his mother, Mary, is exalted now in many, I think all Christian faiths, just because she bore the Son that looked upon women as equal people.
Mr. President, one of the charming parts of your book is your description of the chivalry of the rural Georgia that you grew up in. And I think it'd be interesting for people if you describe that a bit. And you say in the book that you and your wife, Rosalind, were virgins when you married. In that old-fashioned Georgia, and I'm wondering if you were growing up today, young men and women in 2014, would you still want that to be true? Would you still want to be married as husband and wife as virgins?
We argued over who got to ask that question.
I should have known. Well, there would be some competition on the Washington Post who asked me that question. Because, that was a difficult part of the book for me to write, and I really, my wife is my best editor. I did not let her see that part of the book before it was published. Well, that was true. When I was a child and growing up and even a young man, it was not the promiscuity that was permissive done in our community as it is now. We were deeply religious. In fact, Plains now has grown tremendously. We now have 700 people in Plains, and we have 11 churches, so it's still a very religious community. But it's obviously changed now, and I would advise young people, if they can do it, to refrain from sexual intimacy until they get married. But I don't criticize my 12 grandchildren or my 11 great-grandchildren if they decide to do otherwise. And sometimes we go on, in fact, every year we go on a Christmas vacation, and there are times when my grandsons, for instance, have had a very intimate girlfriend who's not yet married, and when they go on a vacation, we look the other way when they sleep in the same room and the same bed. So, you know,
You don't cast them out?
I've learned as the times change that we can't have the same mores and requirements that we had then. But one of the things that happened then was I grew up in a segregated community. We were the only white family. We had 55 African American families living around us. And I respected the black women as much as I did the white women. And I saw then that there was an intense and legal discrimination against black people, and even the white folks who disagreed with it theoretically didn't do much about it because the white people enjoyed the advantages of better jobs and better pay and better education systems and to serve on juries and to make all the selections on voting day. And now we have the same thing on a much greater basis as is in our world, where people know that women are being abused, and quite often we don't want to do much about it because it would disturb the way that we occupy a privileged position.
Isn't this about power, basically?
A lot of it is about power.
The whole idea of men wanting to have power over women, and part of it seems to me to be about sexual fear, men fearing women in some way, that they might emasculate them. And that they are afraid of women's sexuality. How do you change that? I mean, that's so much a part of thousands of years of culture, long before the Bible.
Well, the only way I know to change it is to use what influence you have as an individual to bring about an awareness of the problem. And one way is to be President of the United States and then write a book about the subject. So, as a matter of fact, there are about 20 different forms about discrimination or abuse of women, and I've got a solution in the last chapter for these, what we ought to do. And I would say a lot of the problem, I know you do a lot with religion, is because there is an interpretation in the Bible of superiority for men. And within major denominations like the Catholic Church, for instance, over a period of the last 17 centuries or so, since the 3rd century, it has been ordained by the men leaders of the Catholic Church that women should not be deacons or not be priests. And I've written Pope Francis about this and responded. I got a response that I was able to quote in the book, and he promised me, not because it was I, that he thought should be a greater role for women in the future in the Catholic Church. I was a very devout member of the Southern Baptist Convention for 70 years of my life. I was very active there. And the Southern Baptist in 1970, in the year 2000, decided that women should be subservient to men officially, and that no woman could serve as a priest or a deacon or a chaplain. And they took it to extremes, even for them, I think, because they ordained it in the seminaries where the higher level of Baptists are trained, in the universities, that women couldn't teach a classroom if a boy was a student, and so forth. And you can find individual, verses in the Bible that maybe confirm those beliefs. But
by the way, did you write the Pope snail mail?
I did. I typed the letter myself, and I mailed it to him through the representatives that he has in Washington to represent the Vatican. Yes.
Sally's snail mail question reflects something that's come out during President Carter's book tour, which is that he suspects the NSA is looking at his emails. So this is a good time to ask you, why would they do that?
Well,
do you think they think you're dangerous, or that you're talking to dangerous people, or that they just collect everybody?
If you've sent an email today, they have recorded it. If you've made a telephone call today, they have recorded it. The fact that you made the call, that it originated with you, and they know whom you called, and they know how long the call lasted. And they record the entire thing. They don't go back and listen to your words, they say, but if they want to later on, they can go back and listen to the exact words that you spoke. And I do think that needs to be corrected, and I hope that President Obama will do it. I would like to see him do it by executive order, which I think he could, and I think there's going to be a delay and maybe an attenuation of his corrective action by the Congress. But anyway, that's what I have long for a good while known. I faced the same question when I was in the White House. In 1978, we passed the so-called FISA Act, and that prevented any